Major Thomas Henderson was a seasoned pilot, known for his fearless demeanor and unmatched skills. He had flown countless missions, each filled with danger and uncertainty. But nothing prepared him for the fateful night of his last flight. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the airbase as he prepared his F-15 for takeoff. His squadron was scheduled for a routine night training mission, but tonight felt different. A sense of foreboding gripped him as he fastened his harness, the chill of the night air seeping into his bones. "Are you ready, Major?" his co-pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Davis, asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. "Let's get this over with," he replied, forcing a smile. As the engines roared to life, the ground crew waved them off, their faces obscured by shadows. They took to the skies, soaring over the darkened landscape below. For a while, everything felt normal, but soon, the tranquility was shattered by a blaring alarm. "Warning! Radar detection, unknown target approaching. Lock it on!" Henderson shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. But before they could react, a blinding light engulfed their cockpit. The aircraft jolted violently, and they spiraled out of control. "Mayday! Mayday! We're going down!" Sarah screamed, panic flooding her voice. Henderson fought to regain control, his heart racing as they plunged toward the ground. With a final desperate maneuver, he managed to crash land in a secluded forest, the impact throwing them into darkness. When he regained consciousness, everything was eerily quiet. The aircraft lay in ruins, smoke rising from the wreckage, but they were alive. "Sarah, are you okay?" he called out, scanning the debris for her. "I'm here, Major," she replied, her voice shaky but determined. Together, they crawled from the wreckage, the cold night air biting at their skin. But as they surveyed their surroundings, an unsettling realization settled over them. The forest was dense, shrouded in fog, and the trees loomed like towering specters. As they began to walk, strange noises echoed around them, whispers that seemed to come from the very shadows. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay close," Henderson instructed, feeling a chill run down his spine. They trudged deeper into the woods, the atmosphere thick with tension. Suddenly, a figure darted between the trees, too quick to identify. "Who's there?" Henderson shouted, his voice echoing into the abyss. No response, only the rustling of leaves and the soft crunch of twigs underfoot. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Everywhere they turned, shadows seemed to watch them, closing in with each step. The whispers grew louder, drowning out their thoughts, becoming a chorus of desperate pleas. "Help us! Free us!" they cried, a haunting melody that chilled them to the bone. Henderson felt the weight of dread upon him, the realization that they were in a haunted place, a graveyard of fallen pilots. "Sarah, we need to find a way out," he urged, his heart pounding in his chest. But as they ran, the shadows twisted and contorted, blocking their escape. Time blurred as they wandered aimlessly, the forest shifting around them. With each passing moment, they felt themselves becoming part of the darkness, trapped in a cycle of despair. Finally, they stumbled upon a clearing, illuminated by an otherworldly glow. In the center stood a memorial, adorned with the names of lost airmen. "Look," Sarah whispered, pointing to a name etched into the stone, Major Thomas Henderson. Henderson's blood ran cold as the realization hit him, they had crossed into the realm of the forgotten. In that moment, the whispers ceased, replaced by an overwhelming silence. Sarah clutched his arm, her eyes wide with terror. "Is this where we end?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," Henderson replied fiercely. "We will not be forgotten." With newfound determination, they turned back toward the forest, ready to fight against the shadows that sought to claim them. As they retraced their steps, the shadows shifted, but this time they pushed through, fueled by the desire to escape. With every step, they shouted the names of those who had fallen, reclaiming their stories from the darkness. The whispers returned, now a chorus of encouragement, guiding them back toward the light. Finally, they broke through the tree line, stumbling into the open air. Behind them, the forest erupted in a cacophony of cries, the shadows retreating as they emerged into the safety of the night. Breathless and shaken, Henderson and Sarah knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The moral of the story echoed in their hearts: those who serve will always be remembered, their spirits living on in the hearts of the living. At the Air Force Base in Fairbanks, Alaska, Hangar 18 was a place of whispered legends and chilling tales. Long abandoned, the hangar was said to be haunted by the spirit of a pilot who never returned from a mission. Staff Sergeant Daniel Rios had heard the stories but remained skeptical, dismissing them as mere folklore. One evening, after a long day of maintenance, Daniel and his buddy, Sergeant Nick Ford, decided to explore Hangar 18. "Come on, it'll be fun," Nick urged, a mischievous grin on his face. "Fine, but we're only going for a few minutes," Daniel replied, feeling a mix of excitement and unease. As they entered the hangar, the air grew heavy with dust and neglect. Old planes loomed in the shadows, their outlines barely visible in the dim light. "Do you really think it's haunted?" Daniel asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Nick chuckled, "Only if you believe in ghosts." They moved deeper into the hangar, the creaking of metal echoing around them. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the space, making them shiver. "Did you feel that?" Daniel asked, glancing nervously at Nick. "Yeah, just the wind," Nick replied, but his voice lacked conviction. They wandered further, stumbling upon a locked door at the back of the hangar. "Let's see what's inside," Nick said, shaking the handle. To their surprise, it creaked open, revealing a small room filled with faded photographs and military memorabilia. Among the artifacts, one photo caught Daniel's eye, a picture of a young pilot, eyes full of life, standing next to a plane. As he examined it, a chill crept up his spine, and he felt a presence behind him. "Nick," he called, but there was no response. He turned around to find the room empty, the door swinging shut on its own. Panic surged through him as he rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Suddenly, the air thickened, and the whispers began. "Help us, help him," the voices echoed, their cries laced with sorrow. In a flash, the image of the young pilot in the photo flickered to life, appearing before Daniel. "Who are you?" Daniel stammered, fear gripping him. "I am Lieutenant Michael Harris," the apparition replied, his voice hollow and pained. "I never returned from my last mission. I'm trapped here, forgotten," Michael continued, his form shimmering. Daniel's heart raced as he realized the legend was true, the ghost was seeking closure. "What can I do?" Daniel asked, desperation lacing his voice. "You must tell my story," Michael urged, his expression pleading. Daniel nodded, feeling a sense of purpose surge within him. "Okay, I will. But how?" Suddenly, the hangar shook, and the whispers grew louder, urging him to remember the fallen. With a surge of courage, Daniel called out, "I will honor you and all the others." In that moment, the room filled with a blinding light, and Daniel felt the weight of the ghostly presence lift. The door swung open, and he stumbled out, gasping for air. "Daniel! Are you okay?" Nick asked, panic in his eyes. "I saw him, Nick. The pilot. He wanted us to remember him," Daniel exclaimed, breathless. They left Hangar 18, their hearts heavy with the burden of memory. Daniel vowed to share Michael's story, ensuring he would never be forgotten. The moral resonated deeply: those who sacrifice their lives deserve to be remembered, their legacies living on in the hearts of the living. In the heart of a remote desert base, whispers circulated about the Silent Squadron, a group of pilots who had vanished without a trace during a secret mission. Captain Rachel Thompson was a new recruit, unaware of the dark history that surrounded her. Eager to prove herself, she joined a training exercise that would soon turn into a nightmare. As she prepared for takeoff, Rachel felt a chill in the air. A sense of foreboding hanging over the base. "Something feels off," she murmured to her wingman, Lieutenant Mike Foster. "Don't worry, it's just nerves," Mike replied, trying to reassure her. But as they soared into the sky, a strange fog rolled in, enveloping their aircraft. Visibility dropped to zero, and panic set in as they lost contact with the control tower. "Mayday! We're lost!" Rachel shouted, struggling to maintain control. Suddenly, ghostly figures appeared in the fog, phantoms of the silent squadron, their faces twisted in anguish. Help us, they wailed, their voices echoing in Rachel's mind. She felt their desperation, their longing for freedom, and her heart raced with fear. "Keep flying. Don't look at them," Mike urged, but Rachel's gaze was drawn to the figures. One by one, the apparitions reached out, their ghostly hands pleading for release. "No. I won't let you take me," Rachel screamed, fighting against the pull of the spirits. But the fog thickened, and the shadows closed in, surrounding them. In a moment of desperation, Rachel remembered the stories she had heard about the silent squadron. "Why are you here?" she shouted into the void. The spirits froze, their whispers quieting as they listened. "We are bound to this place, trapped by our final mission," one spirit replied, sorrow etched on its face. "Help us find peace." Determined to save them, Rachel focused on their faces, trying to remember their names. "I will tell your story. I will make sure you're not forgotten," she promised, her voice breaking. As she spoke, the fog began to dissipate, the spirits drawn toward her words. "Remember us," they cried, their voices fading into the night. With one final push, Rachel and Mike broke free from the fog, returning to the safety of the base. Breathless and shaken, they knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. In the aftermath, Rachel made it her mission to honor the silent squadron. She researched their stories, sharing their names and sacrifices with the world. The moral of the tale became clear: those who serve and sacrifice for their country deserve to be remembered, their stories living on in the hearts of the living. These three disturbing Air Force horror stories remind us of the sacrifices made by those in the line of duty. Each tale carries a haunting moral: remembering the fallen is not just a duty, it's a promise. As we reflect on their sacrifices, we keep their spirits alive, ensuring they are never forgotten.